Hey guys, welcome back to the JPM Performance channel. It's of course time for a shop tour. Here we are, November 21st, so 1 week away from Thanksgiving. Next thing you know, it'll be December. Next thing you know, it'll be Christmas. Next thing you know, it'll be January, and it'll be time to go racing. So it is turning cold in Topeka, turned the heat on for the first time this year. So that means we are heading right where we should be this time of year. It's been a very mild fall, so that's been great. But anyway, let's get right into our shop tour. So as usual, all sorts of different things coming through. I've got my what I hope is going to be, I think it's going to be, my last Miata transmission of the year. This is basically a stock transmission that I'm rebuilding for a guy with an STL car out in Colorado. It's just your basic stock rebuild, although there was all sorts of stuff wrong with it, which is typical of a, say, a high mileage core transmission, although I know somebody's been in it because there were some things that were kind of installed backwards, so I know someone's been in this thing. But anyway, it's all coming together. Got a couple parts ordered. This is pretty typical stuff. Get this done because it is just about time to start building engines. And we're getting real close for that. I did get in my shims that I needed for Bill Miller's differential. You can see she's sitting right here. Got all the shims in on both sides, completely rebuilt, all back together, ready to go. Sounds like he's going to bring me another one, so I'm going to learn even more about these BMW differentials. We're going to do a couple gear ratio, rear end ratio changes for different tracks that he's going to be running at this year. So that's all good. These are just the clean transmission cases for that job. And I've got Cameron's car sitting here. So last week we talked about the thermostat thing going on. So I got the thermostat all back in, the new housing installed. Everything appears to be working just fine. I talked to him and he actually wanted me to do a quick, not quick, but a corner weight and alignment because it hadn't been done in a long time. And so got that finished up, and I'm just kind of waiting for the day to warm up here a little bit. In the wintertime, I like to dyno in the afternoon to give me the absolute best chance of somewhat of a warm dyno session. In the summer, I like to dyno first thing because it's hot. So this afternoon, we should be getting the car back on the dyno, and we'll be looking good, hopefully. So Steven's car obviously has been up on this lift for weeks and weeks and weeks. Since we're kind of still waiting on me finishing up the engine for the car, put the wheels and tires on, got it on the ground, kind of did a preliminary, just kind of see what the ride height looked like. The back was too high, so after I put it up on the lift, I lowered the perches down. The front was a little high, but since there's no engine, that'll probably come down a little bit. But what I like to see about this is that we've got a solid, I don't know, about 2 inches of droop travel between where the ride height is going to be and when it's down, when it's up on the lift and our suspension is down. So now we're up against the bottom of the shock. This is a really good droop amount. Of course, MCS knows what they're doing, right? So this is a really good droop amount for a Miata. So she's just kind of sitting here in limbo, waiting on an engine, of course. Now, what we have back in the shop, the big project that you guys haven't seen in a while, but the Camaro is back. Yes. I'm getting smarter because the first thing I did was put it up in the air, pulled the belly panels off, pulled the body off, and I put it out in my overseas container that I have next to the shop because those things literally take up another spot that I don't really have. Not only that, this car is going to be here a while. So what I'm getting started on, we talked about how we've got a new engine coming, but the first thing that I need to work on is the rear end, because when he was at his last event, he snapped an axle. So no bueno, right? So we've got a couple of used axles over there that were our spares. So I called and ordered a couple new axles. For those of you that have been paying attention, Speedway Engineering out in California shut their doors, and they're the ones that make all these axles. Apparently there's another company that's buying them that in a month or two are going to be able to make some axles. So I ordered 2 sets of axles. Probably won't see them until, so they say 2 months. It's probably going to be March, right? You generally double that kind of stuff. But to get this, to get the differential out and get the axle stub out, this entire housing has to come out of the car. It actually has to go that way because the dry sump tank is right here. But you can't just yank the diff out of the front. Not only that, I want to clean the housing really well, see if we have any shrapnel in there. The axle seals for these are actually way inboard. They seal right here so the oil does not travel down this housing. And then out here what we have is a double bearing packed with grease set up on the outside. One of the things you notice on these axles is that they've got a ball end, right? See how that's not straight? The reason is this can come into that outer hub and you can shim that outer hub for camber and also toe with shims out here. So the ball enables it to rotate. Pretty trick deal. I actually had these on my RX-7 too. I haven't seen them since then, but these are a couple of good used ones that we've got that I'll probably end up putting in for now while we're waiting. But I'm going to get the axle housing out first. Start nut and bolt checking this car. You can see how filthy it is. The last place he was at was Colorado, and if you've ever been out racing in Colorado, you know that it's very dusty and dirty, and your car gets pretty dirty out there. So I've got to clean up the car, nut and bolt check everything. Once this is under control, I'll start pulling the engine out, which is a job in itself if you can imagine. So that's where we're at there. Did get Ken Kennard's car on the dyno. In preparation for Florida, we had to put a fresh transmission in, so I always like to break those in, make sure they're shifting good, make sure the engine's making good power. We did a clutch change, and so we're just making sure everything's good before we go from Topeka, Kansas to basically Miami, Florida for the first race. So car's running good. It's just sitting over in the dyno bay for now, marinating. All we have to do now is get some spares ready and clean it up. Going to be ready for Joe to take it to Florida. So Mazda 2 update. We had talked about the fuel cell, how my next little project here was getting this fuel cell mounting in order. So what I came up with was a couple of tabs that I'm actually going to weld into the chassis here, into the fuel cell mounting. And I'm going to mount one here, a bar that comes down here, and then I'm going to put another one over here that goes up to the cage. And I'm just going to use this smaller round tubing, and that will do a really good job of bracing this fuel cell mounting. Once that's done, be able to put the cell back in and work on running the fuel lines. Actually talked to Joe McClugan about my rocker, and he said that he shipped it like 10 days ago, UPS. We tracked it just this morning, and turns out it's in Topeka, so odds are I'll have it this afternoon. It's coincidence, right? But I know I've been talking about the rocker for a couple of weeks now. But basically what I've been working on is finishing up disassembling the fuel system up under the hood, and then thinking about how I'm going to get this done here while also ordering some of the fuel lines and the fittings and all of that. So I'm kind of a big proponent. If you're going to be changing out your fuel lines in a car that you know they've been in the car for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, at the bare minimum, change the lines. Depending on how the fittings look and how they are working, you can reuse Aeroquip fittings, and I will, depending on how they look. But because this is kind of a new deal for me, and I'm not going to use the kind of fuel lines that we used before, I'm going to replace all the fittings. I'm going to put bulkheads in and run them through the car. So we'll be getting into that pretty soon. So that's kind of where we're at. You can see I've got the welder sitting here. I'm just getting ready to weld in these brackets. Those will be done by next week. Hopefully, should have all the bracing done, fuel cell in, and some components started on on that as well. Well, obviously we've got a short week next week because it's Thanksgiving, so won't be in the shop Thursday and Friday, but for any of you that have been watching these, you probably know, and I've told quite a few of you, we actually record these on Wednesday so that John has time to edit it and put it together so that what you get to see is the best product that we can turn out. So if you missed it on the channel this week, on Monday we dropped a video on doing an advertisement on Bring a Trailer. You guys saw the Indy MX-5 that I had that went on Bring a Trailer a couple weeks ago. So I did a video on my ideas of doing all the pictures and the descriptions and the videos and all of that, and then we also did right at the end of the auction, we watched the end of the auction so you could see how that figured out. If you haven't checked that out, it's right on the channel. It's the video before this one, so check that out as well. Are we going to be doing a shop tour next week, John? Yep. Sure. John says he's going to be here, so we're going to do a shop tour next week so you guys will be able to see what kind of progress we've got going on. There's always something, as you know. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Have a great rest of your week. See you next week. Take care.